Hey everybody, so welcome back to Jim Bob's Garden. So here I am, all up in the garden, literally in the garden. Mostly because what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling weeds. Alright, so I gotta get down inside there and dig these suckers out. Try and get as much of that dollar weed out of there as I can. And the reason for that is because my New Year's resolution this year is to really get my garden growing well and just try and stay ahead of the power curve. Last year I got a little behind, and I want to try and stay ahead of the game and make sure that I have things going like I want them to. Alright, which involves starting right now, getting all the weeds out and getting my garden prepped up. So for us here in Jacksonville area, alright, basically our last frost is usually sometime, our anticipated, our projected last frost is usually sometime in the middle of February. I have not looked, but either way, I'm not planting right quite yet. But now is the time to start getting your garden beds ready. Now, you see me digging my hands down in here and pulling a lot of this stuff out, and a lot of you are probably saying, man, you're supposed to go no dig, you don't dig in your garden. But I, first off, don't think that that's absolutely necessary. People have been digging up gardens for thousands of years and growing plenty of food, so I don't think that it's a mandatory thing, one. And two, I have what's called dollar weed. Now dollar weed is all of this white stuff here, and it has leaves that look like this, which I guess somehow or other resembles a dollar coin, thus dollar weed. But one of the things with dollar weed is it will spread like all get out. And while I don't know that it's actually bad for your garden, because any life is probably good, I know that it can kind of take over and shade out the garden, shade out the plants you have growing, and make it a little more difficult to harvest greens and so on, even though it is completely edible. And if you ever really get hungry, you can always eat that. We've had several conversations about that in the past. Matter of fact, when I was talking last year, and yes, I mean last year because it is the 2nd of January now. But last year I was talking about how, we're probably all not going to starve, even though everybody seems to think that, or at that point seemed to think that between the pandemic and the issues that were going on as a result of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, we were all going to die of starvation. Quick, plant a garden. You'll die if you don't. That's not the case. All right. There's just too much stuff that gets grown here for that to happen, in my opinion, at the moment. Now, that may change in the future. I don't know. But as it sits right now, gardening is a great thing to do, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. But the other thing is, we've all just made New Year's resolutions, and most of us probably decided we're going to lose weight, whether that be by dieting or getting rid of your significant other, or whatever the case may be. By the way, people do make great compost. No, I'm just kidding. Don't compost your enemies. At least don't get caught doing it. But at any rate, gardening is a great thing to do for a number of good reasons, and I've gone over them a lot in the past, but not the least among them is stress relief, health. I think it's really good for you to get out in the sun and the air, get a little bit of nature on you, so you go in and wash it off. I always have a lot more respect for a man with dirty hands than a man with clean hands. That's just me. But at any rate, now's a great time to start looking at getting things done and getting everything prepped up so that you can actually start planting in your garden. Along with that, one of the other preparations I highly recommend you start thinking about is getting seed. If you're going to be ordering seed online, you're going to find here in the very near future, if not already, a lot of these seed vendors are going to be out. They have limited supplies, so you're going to want to get ahead of that. Now, with that being said though, I mean, every store in the spring will be selling seeds. Even Dollar Tree sells seeds in the spring. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you got particular seeds that you want to get that are a little more difficult to find, now would be the time to go out there and really start looking at getting them. Along with that is prepping your beds. And the way I go about prepping my beds is, first I dig out all the weeds, which I usually do by hand because it works better and I have nice loose soil. Even though it's getting better and better, it is still fairly sandy and fairly loose. So I can get in there and dig into it and really get a lot of the weed roots out. Particularly the dollar weed and the nut sedge grass and all of that. It works the best for me, but I have a limited garden. Now if you don't have a limited garden, you've got a larger operation, you may want to use some kind of mechanized, weed removal. You can put cloth over the top, and if you're going to do that, now would be the time to do it. Start laying down some either weed cloth or some black plastic and kill everything off. And then you can just plant directly into the soil. But you will have things like the dollar weed that will continue to grow. It's got these little roots, and we just got done with a week where we had 20 degree temperatures at night for like 4 or 5 days in a row. All right, and yet still this is alive and growing. You can see the brand new leaf started there. So if you're wanting to get the dollar weed out of your garden, you're going to have to pull them out by hand, and even that is just going to knock the population down, because unless you get every little piece of root like that, it's going to come back. Plus it tends to grow up under the soil from out in your garden or your yard, so unless you have all the dollar weed killed everywhere else, you're still going to get dollar weed in your garden. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but it is something I try and knock back this time of year. So, my New Year's resolution this year is to actually, one, produce more videos for you guys, but primarily is to get more growing in my garden. I need to get a good healthy garden going, and now's the time to go ahead and get started. So first thing I do is, like I said, I go through and I prep the beds up, and I prep them up by going ahead and digging up all the weeds. And once I get all the weeds pulled up and out of the garden, I'll take those and compost them, because one of the things I'm going to want later on is some compost. And then I'll take my rake it all out nice and smooth, and then I'll cover it with something. I've got some whole big pile of grass clippings, and I'm going to put a layer of grass clippings over the top, so that will kind of help protect what life is in the soil. I do have some worms in here. I was really happy. I got to digging in here, and I found a bunch of worms, baby worms, so very pleased with that. So I want to protect that life as well by covering it with something. And yeah, I mean, I'll get some weed seed in there, but I'll be able to pull that weed out, or the weeds out, as time goes on. Now in the gardens where I have a little less good soil, like this is actually looking very nice. It's very loamy. You can tell it's got a lot of organic material in it. Plenty of worm food in there, lots of roots and stuff that they can munch on. But the stuff that isn't looking as good as this particular bed is, I'll go ahead and throw it down a layer of compost over the top, and then put the grass clippings or some other sort of covering over the top of it until it's time to go ahead and get started. Now I don't like to do the covering myself, because what I find is after I get done doing all this tilling up and getting it ready to go, I'll start to have weeds pop up, and those are the weed seeds that are near the surface. And what will happen is I'll come through and I'll pull those weeds out, or dig them under with a hoe, and that will eliminate a lot of the near surface weed seed, because it will sprout, try to grow, and I'll kill it, and I won't have nearly as many weeds. So that is part of the thing. Now the other thing is too, is as you're doing this, you're going to find the little baby worms like this. Now if I can kill those worms off now, that is one less worm to make babies and have more worms in my soil. So that's another advantage, is I can go through and look for pests that I can get rid of now to try and eliminate at least some of the problem later on. So that's what I got going on. That's my New Year's resolution this year, is really, if I have one, which I don't really believe in them because they usually get ignored. But that's my plan for this year, is to get started early, get things going. Like I said, it is the 2nd of January. It's a perfect time to get started, particularly if you got some time off, and if not, half hour a day. You know, now I know a lot of you will have a harder time doing this during the weekdays because, you know, it gets dark so early that by the time you get off of work it's probably dark. But there's still the weekend. If you can get out here and spend an hour, maybe 2, in your garden, you can do a lot of damage to the weed population and really make things look a whole lot better in a fairly short amount of time. You know, and if you're having issues keeping up, then maybe just plant a little smaller garden, a little less of your garden. Maybe just cover the rest of it and let it sit and go fallow until next year. All right. But either way, now is the time to start. Now is the time to really start getting into the garden and getting things going on. We usually only have one bad week where, you know, we get out down into the 20s, so I'm assuming that's behind us now. So a lot of things that might not make it through 20 degrees should do just fine if I plant them now. Things like carrots, cabbage, kale, things of that nature that are cold tolerant. Even lettuce should be okay. Though in this area of the garden, I won't be planting anything. As you can see, I don't get much sun. It's I don't know, 2 o'clock or so. So even though this would normally be a very sunny time, I've got trees back behind me that shade this section of the garden. So I typically don't plant this one until I start seeing the sun well back into the garden, which will be, you know, probably late March or so. But even so, it still needs to be prepped up. The weeds need to be gotten rid of. Need to get things cleaned up and get ready to go. Because, hey, springtime's going to be here a lot sooner than you think. And if you put it off, then you're going to be scrambling when it comes time to actually get to planting. All right, that's what I got going on right now. Is getting things prepped up, getting ready to go. Here probably this week I'll be doing some more videos on planting and getting things in trays in the greenhouse so that I'll have some established plants to put out when it comes time. But either way, thanks for stopping by. Do me a favor, give me a like and a subscribe, and let me know what you think. Most importantly, get something growing. And I know you can't really grow a whole lot right now, but it's a great time to start prepping up so that when the time comes, you can get to growing like you want to. All right, thanks for stopping by. Y'all take care. Come back and see me.